All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show with your host and facilitator, Mark Wallace. I am glad to be back with you here again on this Monday evening. There are developing breaking stories around the presidential ordering the strikes in Iran, and of course, around the Israel um, Iran conflict that is now 12 days and counting. And there have been some recent developing news about this is that the president has gone on his Truth Social and announced that there will be a ceasefire. And I will get into that. And I will have guests that will be joining me to talk with us about this to help us to really understand or to at least enlighten us a little bit more about what is happening here, what we know, what we don't know, and what is to come about this. Brigadier General Blaine D. Hote, who is a Deputy United States Military Representative to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. He supports the military representative and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in executing the United States political military missions at the North Atlantic Council, is going to be joining me. And also joining me is Professor Robert Papes, a political scientist at the University of Chicago. And they're both be my guests. And I'm going to be bringing on Professor Pate with me now. Professor Pate, thank you very much for joining the program.
Glad to do it, Mark.
Well, there are a lot of developing news in this, even as we speak. Just in the recent, I guess, 15 or 20 minutes, the president went on Truth Social and made an announcement. But so that our audience can understand exactly, or as much as we best we can tell, Israel and Iran has been in this conflict for about 12 days now. And Israel attacked Iran, saying that they have evidence that Iran is enriching uranium to build a nuclear weapon, so that it's enriching its uranium to weaponize its uranium. Can you tell us what is actually going on here?
What's going on in the big picture, Mark, is about 12 days ago, Israel and now America started a war against Iran, and Iran is doing everything it can to stop the military hostilities while still preserving its chances for survival in the future.
So, what do we know that is there any concrete evidence? Because you have the president's own intelligence committee telling them that there is no evidence of Iran weaponizing uranium or enriching uranium to build a nuclear weapon. It almost sounds like we're going back to something similar to the Iraq war invasion, where we had statements about that there were weapons of mass destruction, only to find out, even when we had inspectors there, that said that they found no evidence of weapons of mass destruction. What are we?
You're catching it just right, Mark. What's happening is we are almost doing a replay of what got us into that forever war against Iraq 20 years ago. Now, there is a difference, Mark, which is that Iran has also watched this 20 years go by. And what it has seen is that Iraq got conquered because it didn't have nuclear weapons. It has seen Russia has attacked Ukraine because Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, and it sees North Korea is alive and well and flourishing as best it can because it has nuclear weapons. So, Mark, what's also been happening is Iran is developing uranium enrichment. And there's really no reason other than to build a nuclear weapon for Iran to enrich uranium to 60%. Now, there are these inside baseball quibbles about how long it could take Iran to actually assemble a nuclear weapon. And that's kind of what you're referring to in the spat between Trump and Tulsi Gabbard. The issue is this. The technical issue is this, Mark. In order for Iran to miniaturize a nuclear weapon and put it on top of a missile, that would take several years. And that's what Gabbard is almost surely talking about. But that's not what happened in 1945. In 1945, Fat Man and Little Boy, those are the bombs that we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Those were pretty crude devices. Those were big 10,000 pound bombs. These were big, heavy things. They could be carried on cargo ships. They could be carried on planes. They could be. They can't be put on the nose of a missile. That's true. But I'm sorry to say, Iran is going to have a lot of abilities here to threaten those nuclear weapons. The big problem here is that we just have no air power alone can't do this job. I mean, I've been studying air power for 30 years. I taught for the U.S. Air Force, wrote a big book, Bombing to Win. I know quite a bit about this. Every year in my courses at the University of Chicago, I end with a simulated bombing of Iran. I just did this a few weeks ago, and it's always the same. The targets get hit, and they did get hit in this case, and then the material can't be found. Usually you expect the material to be secreted away before the bombings even hit, and that's what happened in this case, and that's what happens every single year that we do the simulated attack in my courses. So this is a completely foreseeable outcome, and it's sucking us in bit by bit into a deeper war.
So, what do you think that the strategy is here? Is this the strategy part on President Trump, or is this the strategy of Benjamin Netanyahu to get President Trump to do what President Trump did? Now,
what you are seeing. No, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And would we, and the second part of that question is, would we be here if Donald Trump had not pulled us out of the original agreement in 2018 that was negotiated through the Obama administration in 2015?
What you are seeing here, Mark, is not a security strategy. Like I'm a world's expert in international security. What you're seeing is a political strategy. What Donald Trump is doing is he is playing to his domestic political base. He did this with tariffs. He's done this with sending troops to LA. He's doing this against Harvard and the universities. And now he's doing it on the internet with international politics. And his base is a coalition. It's not just one thing. And there's a large number of very hawkish Jews who have voted for Donald Trump, given enormous money to Donald Trump. Remember, in his first administration, he moves the embassy and so forth. So this has been a situation here where you have a lot of domestic political support in Trump's domestic political coalition for exactly this. And that's why every time we go on TV and you watch, whether it's CNN or Fox or whatever, nobody can make sense of his international security policy because it's not about the things that we usually focus on. It's about his domestic political coalition. And that's why what he's doing in these news conferences, even with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, he's playing to the Fox News audience. This is domestic politics on the world stage. You folks like you maybe are even more versed on domestic politics than I am. But so I don't really, this is, in the last 5 years, I've had to learn a lot about domestic politics because it matters so much now to our international security policy. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. It is all built to the base. And the base is now about half of America. It's not just 20% of the public. And you probably are going to come out of this seeing his opinion polls with that base is going to be high. He's healing the fissures in the base here with a lot of his statements. A lot of this is just for domestic political consumption. And the world is paying a price. And I'm sorry to say that if Iran is compelled to develop nuclear weapons, this may be very costly for all of us in the long run.
Well, is this going to prevent Iran from actually coming back to the negotiating table? Would they be, say that they're not going to be able to trust this administration or trust the United States because of what President Trump did in 2018 and what he is doing now?
There's certainly no one's going to trust Donald Trump in a negotiation, and that's probably any negotiation he entered into. He double-crossed Iran twice in the last 12 days, not just once. So everybody sees that, and that's true in every part of negotiation, domestic as well, that Donald Trump will be entering into. The big thing here is not whether Iran, in a paper way, goes back to a negotiation. The question is whether Donald Trump will put something on the table that hasn't put on before. Iran is not accepting complete surrender. And the reason it won't do complete surrender of its nuclear program is because there's no confidence that even if it surrenders the program, it won't be bombed to daylights over some other issue right after it does that. Or Israel will bomb it on some other issue. So there's no. The administration would have to come up with something really new. And there is something new, Mark, to put on the table. And I mentioned this in some of my Twitter here just recently, because this is really now time to talk about this, which is putting on the table that Israel would join the non-proliferation treaty if Iran abides by the non-proliferation treaty. You see, right now, there's a huge double standard, which is Israel is asking, and America's asking, for Iran to essentially abide by the non-proliferation treaty, but Israel's not even a member of the non-proliferation treaty. It can speed and development all the nuclear weapons it wants to, and you see it bomb anybody it wants to, but it can build all the nuclear weapons it wants to. Well, if that's the case, there's no way Iran is really ever going to concede on this agreement where they have no nuclear weapons. Israel has infinite numbers of nuclear weapons. And increasingly, you're going to see that Saudi Arabia, other countries in the region, they're not going to go along with this much longer. They're already sending pretty strong signals because they don't want to be kowtowed to Israel. I mean, if they did, their regimes will be toppled. So this is really about how do you put something new on the table, Mark? And the new thing is a deal, the grand bargain, which is Israel joins the non-proliferation treaty, agrees to limit its nuclear weapons. Iran agrees to freeze its nuclear program. Now you've got something to talk about that could actually be credible and meaningful. Other than that, we're just going to be right back at the same thing. The U.S. calls for unconditional surrender. Iran can't do it. And we're just going to be bombing targets here in caves and so forth because we have not knocked out this enrichment.
Is it going to require that there be a regime change before that kind of negotiation could actually be in effect?
I don't think regime changes is on the table here. Mark, I've studied air power for 30 years. I taught for the U.S. Air Force. In 100 years, air power alone has never toppled a regime, never produced the regime change. Now, what would it mean to produce regime change? Yes, air power can kill leaders, but that's not good enough here. Because the new leaders, as you're seeing, as Israel kills these Iran leaders, new leaders are coming up and they're still bombing Israel. So in order for regime change to be meaningful, it would have to be that you kill Israel or America kills the current leaders, and then the new leaders are pro-American or pro-Israel. Well, that's just never happened with air power. And the reason is because the more you kill with air power, the more you produce nationalist resistance. You're seeing mobs in the street in Tehran calling for America's head now as a result of all this. Well, this is the natural reaction. So there's no way that this would happen. And it's never happened in 100 years of trying. Israel has decapitated Hezbollah leaders, Hamas leaders for decades, and never once has Hezbollah, Hamas then brought in a new leader that's pro-Israel. This is a fantasy discussion, and it's just not going to happen. It's the only way to get regime change here got to put an army in, you got to do it. And even then, as we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, man, this is incredibly messy, even when you put the army in.
So what's the big objective here? What was the reason that in the dead of night, with no seeming warning to anybody, that Israel decided, or Benjamin Netanyahu just decided, that I'm going to bomb Iran in the middle of this Israel-Gaza conflict that has been going on for 3 years now? So what is the main objective here?
Yeah, Israel's objective was clearly to trap America into then bombing Fordo. I call this the smart bomb trap. I wrote a piece about 7 or 8 days ago in Foreign Affairs. Your listeners could go find it. I called it the smart bomb trap. And what happened here is Israel is trying to trap the United States so that it would be forced to come to its defense because it doesn't have the ability to knock out Fordo or the other deeply buried target, say Natanz. Well, the problem here is America fell into the trap. And now, why did the trap occur? It occurred because of domestic politics. So what Israel is doing is it is basically able to play domestic politics. It understands Trump's base, and it is able to play a game here, and it did succeed. So what the United States' goal was, as I'm telling you, is, yes, it said it wanted to eliminate the program, blah, blah, blah. The real goal was to satisfy Trump's base. That's really what's happening here. And so what Israel did is it triggered a problem for Donald Trump, domestic political problem. Trump is responding to his domestic political problem. And what he's hoping is he can do something that's a quick, think of it as a drive-by shooting, Mark, where there's a drive-by shooting, you knock out something, and then everybody can go home. Well, the problem here is that it's not just like gang warfare here. This is a little bit bigger than that. And Iran really has enriched uranium. There is photographic evidence from satellites that there's evidence it moved out the stuff even before we bombed. And so now we've bombed. We're admitting, Vice President Vance is admitting, we have no clue as to whether we destroyed any enriched uranium. And so what does this tell you? This tells you that this has all been about domestic politics here. And Iran, though, is probably going to speed faster to a nuclear weapon. See, this is the real downside here. That this is not, Iran's incentives now are to, over the next few months, actually develop a nuclear weapon, have the material for 4 or 5, and then do a nuclear test on its own land. And that will scare everybody here. But Iran's really being pushed to do this because it's got to find a way to deter these countries from bombing the daylights out of its country anytime they wake up and have a domestic political reason to bomb them.
Well, Iran doesn't really have any allies here. But how does this make the standing of the United States? Now, we entered into an agreement in Budapest, and I think it was in 1993, with Ukraine. Ukraine, give up your enrichment of uranium, give up your nuclear weapons, and we will be there to support you if you are attacked by Russia. Russia invades Ukraine. We have a change in presidency, and this administration basically is walking away from that agreement. How does this look with the rest of our allies? Are they going to be able to rely on us, and do we still have a significant respect for our allies for being trusted as an alliance?
So you're right that Iran is very limited in the allies it have. However, Russia is one of those allies. It's been providing Russia drones that Russia has been using in Ukraine, and Russia has been helping it with its Bashir reactor. And before we got on, which could have changed, Mark, so your listeners will have to see whether this is still true. But just about an hour before I got on with you, the foreign minister of Iran was supposed to be talking with counterparts in Moscow here. So there certainly seems to be some continuing discussions with the Russians. Now, with the Europeans, as you're suggesting here, there is an issue, and I call it in my work soft balancing. You see, I think the Europeans have already been soft balancing because of the tariffs here. And by soft balancing, they're not hard balancing with military power against the United States, but they are increasingly getting economic distance and doing things separately from the United States. So I am right now speaking from you in China. And I've been here for a week, and I'm traveling around China giving lectures on Trump's foreign policy, but I'm also visiting its future industries, its Xiaomi car industry, which now I actually toured this, and you can't see this online because they won't let me take pictures of this, but it's 90% of the assembly is done by robots. And then I toured one of the older assembly plants here, Mercedes-Benz, where only 5% is done by robots. So, Mark, what's happening in China is while we're messing around in these forever wars here, China is speeding ahead in future industries, and it's not doing it in ways that people can find the video on the internet. You got to go and see it for yourself, which is why I'm physically here to see it. I just went to Alibaba's AI cloud yesterday to see what they're doing. Oh my goodness gracious, are they poised to blow us out of the water on their new operating system here? And there's a whole story underneath that. So what's happening is that how are they doing that? Where are the customers? It's not in America, it's in Europe, and it's in Asia. That is what's happening, Mark, is the world is starting to as Trump wants to separate from the world's saying, fine, look, we got 75% of the world to work with. You 25% of the world, America, fine. You don't want to play fair. We'll just go operate without you. And China's doing this. We are really, really this idea that we control everything because we are Americans, and Donald Trump can just play this like a puppet master. No, you're seeing people playing Trump like a puppet here. And increasingly, the Europeans, I think, are going to start doing what I call soft balancing. They're just simply going to build economic relations that leave America out increasingly. And China is fast already been doing that since COVID. It's amazing. These plants, Mark, that I'm visiting, they have been built since 2022. All of these big new buildings, which are bigger than the University of Chicago's giant complex as a university, all have arisen in the last 2 years, 2.5 years. It's stunning to see what's happening here. And I'm seeing it. These aren't hollow shells. There are thousands and thousands of people here. And it is just, they are excited. They are taking off because they see themselves as the future. This is what we're missing while we're playing around with these forever wars.
So, where are we, and why is this? Why are we being time warped as though we're almost, where time has stopped with us in terms of innovation and creating, manufacturing and technology? Where are we? Is it because we have a president who wants to appear to be a strong man like, Kim Jong-un or Xi Jinping? But where are we, and why are we in this place? We're supposed to be the leader.
My 30-year career, what I have seen is the more countries are open, and China has been opening, the more they grow in Zoom, the more they are controlling. And the buzzword among the Democrats now is Trump's an authoritarian. I think this is just too flimsy of a word. It could mean anything, okay? This is just, again, these are just like more words like the deplorables. They don't mean anything, okay? Right. They're snarky, okay? The reality is, though, that the more governments centralize, and Trump's centralizing power, the more they freeze things. And I was in Libya in 2010, Muammar Gaddafi's Libya, The things that were there looked exactly like 1969 when Gaddafi took over. There had been almost no progress in Libya from 69 to 2010 when Gaddafi took over. I went to the Soviet Union for the first time in 1982. It looked like 1954 when Stalin died. It was stunning how little progress had happened in the Soviet Union in 1982 here. That's why Gorbachev tried to open up the Soviet Union. It cost them the country, but that's the reason. So what's happening, Mark, is we are now centralizing political power. I believe we're seeing this, I'm sorry to say, on both sides are starting to play these centralized games. And what's occurring is, as we're playing this domestic politics, China and other countries in the world, they're leaving us behind. And these days when China's in rickshaws, there's no bicycle. There's almost not a single bicycle anymore. It's a sea of beautiful Lexus and beyond cars. The EV cars I'm riding in aren't just self-driving, Mark. They're luxurious. They have air-conditioned seats. I don't mean heat warmers. I mean seats that are air conditioned. It's incredible, the creature comforts that are in the EVs. China's not selling EVs based on green. They're selling EVs based on luxury. They even have places for the women to put their high-heeled shoes in the cars when they can take them off here when they get in. It's incredible to see how much they're going high-end. I haven't seen the Teslas that I ride in the United States. These are like now a Hyundai compared to what's happening in the EVs in China. It's a new world. And I think we've got to get some American politicians going and really seeing what's going on in China in the last couple of years.
That maybe, the Democrats need a rebirth, and they certainly need to find some footing, and they can't seem to find any footing. Calling Donald Trump names or calling him, as you say, an authoritarian, that's not getting it for mainstream America. And AOC
as well, and Rahm Emanuel, my former mayor of Chicago, they should come over to Wuhan, not Beijing. I'd be glad with my center to organize the trip for them, the University of Chicago Project on Security and Threats, meet with the mayors, see the Wuhan model. Wuhan used to be like Pittsburgh, Mark. I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. Wuhan used to be like Pittsburgh, where they had steel mills and so forth. That was 30 years ago. Wuhan is the model that Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Kansas City should be following, because what's happened is they've married these old industrial, like steel industries, with brand new optics and the future industries with large growth in the blue collar, what we would call blue collar universities of engineering training, and it's built around a model here so that you can have vast growth of these future industries. This is what the Democrats could do, which is they could come up, Ro Khanna, Rahm Emanuel, AOC, if you know them and you can help, I'm glad to organize the trips here for them in China so they can see these what's happening for themselves. And this would be the way to recapture the blue collar. This would be a way to create a positive agenda. Look, I understand the anger here. I've been to Kamala Harris's rallies. I understand the anger that's going on. I'm not trying to downplay the anger, but we've got to move to the future, and we can just see that it is really possible to take these blue-collar Rust Belt cities. That's what Wuhan was, and now it has a center. Its area is called laser optic valley, like Silicon Valley. So imagine if you had laser optic valley in Pittsburgh, or if you had robotic 90% car manufacturing here in parts of Ohio. This is what the Democrats could add. And I think there's a whole collection of Democrats that would be open to this. I think, again, AOC, Rahm Emanuel, Ro Khanna, These are the people who are searching for forward-looking ways. Yes, they are reflecting anger. That's of course the case. But the Democrats here, we need a new way to go forward. And this is not just a Democratic Party thing. This is a country thing. This is a America thing. This is how you could revitalize America for the future. It's not about making America like it was in the 19th century. This is creating America for the next century. And that's what I would use as the slogan here. America for the next century. Trump has been all about going back to the last century. And the more things are going, and I'm telling you, the folks in China, they actually could almost care less what's going on with America here, the tariffs. I've talked to the businessmen, because what they're doing is they're moving forward to the future. They're going to make enormous amounts of money, and they're raising up. And by the way, Mark, one more thing. As our poverty level has gone down or hardly been stagnant in the last 30 years, do you know what's happened in China since Tiananmen Square in 1989? The bottom of their country has nothing but up. It's amazing to see the growth of the bottom of what used to be starvation peasants, where people lived with oil lamps now. These are now the product, the managers in these future industries. And they've gone from this in their lifetimes. You see what I mean? And this is really something, because that's what we need in America. We need to raise up the bottom. This is why I came, Mark. I came to China because I'm studying a lot of violence, international violence, American political violence. You probably know that. We didn't talk about that today. I wanted to see what's really going on in China for real. No one's actually been here since COVID. Donald Trump's not actually traveling around China. Rahm Emanuel did the Sister Cities program in Chicago here, 2012. Wuhan is a sister city of Chicago. He hasn't been here, certainly not even when he was ambassador to Japan. And I know that because I talked to the city planners in Wuhan directly about this. They would love to welcome Rahm Emanuel with open arms here and build on the Chicago sister city idea. So I believe we have an enormous, future here. But these are the things we need to move to as a country. And we just need to, sort of not keep focusing on the turbulence here, which is going to be so hard. I understand that. Iran with a nuclear weapon. Oh, my goodness gracious. We've been worrying about this. I've been worrying about this for decades. That said, we also need to see about America's future, because other countries, they're moving to the future here.
They're certainly passing us by. Listen, we're going to have to have you back to talk more about that, because I think that is another battle that, as you say, that is absolutely passing us by, and the Democratic Party can't find its footing, because we do have a problem with the Democratic Party, and talking about the kinds of things and that kind of innovation.
And Mark, maybe
rebuild.
You could do something to help broker this by bringing on Rahm Emanuel and allowing us to have a sort of a conversation about this together here, because he may in fact enjoy having a positive conversation about this. I think that we need, or maybe AOC, we need to have somebody, not just the politician doing the politician thing, not just the professor doing the professor thing. You see, we need to come together as a country, and this would be an example.
Without question. Professor Robert Pape, political scientist at the University of Chicago. Listen, you're going to have to come back to talk about this more with this, of course, this situation that is going on. But what you just talked about lays out where we need to rebuild and certainly need to rebuild our country. We're going to talk about that. Thank you, Professor Robert Pape. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Okay, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, folks, listen, that's really where it is. I'm a Democrat. The Democratic Party, we have to get away from, just as Dr. Pate was talking about, we have to get away from this idea of trying to out-anger Donald Trump, who is a petty individual who just is a pathetic individual. But I think we have to get past that. And the Democratic Party has to find its footing, as he says, the kinds of innovation that's going on in China there. We can't even build an airport. We can't even build an airport here where one airport that the FAA has told us more than 35 years ago that we need to build a third airport here in Illinois. We can't build an airport in China. China is building 100 airports, and they want to have 100 airports built by 2025. I think that they're halfway to that point. As he talked about these sprawling buildings where they have all this kinds of innovation, this is where the Democratic Party used to thrive, and the Democratic Party needs to get there to find its footing. This is where I believe that we need to be. Yes, we have to pay attention to these things that are going on right now. But remember, as I said before, if you watch what is going on the front end, much of this could be about the distraction from the things that they are actually doing on the back end. And so that's where we need to be strategic. And the answer for us is not within the Republican Party, because the Republican Party, they're not interested in what Professor Pate just talked about. They're not interested in bringing industry back to these communities, bringing industries back so that you are lifting people up. They are purely about making sure that they are legislating to their donors who own them, which are the billionaires and the multi millionaires. Not about bringing up people out of poor into the middle class. And the way that we did that in the 50s and 60s is that we had industry that was all around the country. Here in Chicago, we had industry. 70% of all Black employment in the city of Chicago in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s was in labor. It was in industry. And we brought people up out of poverty into the middle class, where they were able to buy homes, they were able to buy a car, they were able to take their family on a vacation. A mother could stay home with their children. We didn't have the vast problems that we see having domestically in our communities. Ronald Reagan comes in and brings in the whole corporatist idea in 1980 and cuts the top tier tax rates from 94% down to 35%, which means that a CEO, if he took more than, in today's dollars, $10 million out of the company, he had to pay 94 cents tax on every dollar that he took over that amount, which controlled and forced corporations and CEOs to reinvest in people in the country. And so we had a growing middle class. We had a growing middle class, and we were bringing people up out of poverty until Ronald Reagan started to come in. We lost 47,000 manufacturer offshored their companies overseas, taking 7.5 million jobs. And that number has ballooned up past 10 million. Now, it is going to take innovation to do that. But this is where we need to be. This is where we need to be, and this is what we need to be talking about and seeing what they're doing over in China. While we're talking about bombing other people's countries and getting into these fights with war criminals like Benjamin Netanyahu, and we have people like Donald Trump, who has no idea, who doesn't have a clue, and who is not interested in bringing people up out of poverty into the middle class. And the way that you do that is that you have to marry industry within our country in terms of innovation. That's where the party needs to be. That's where the party needs to be. And we need to force that, no matter who it is. Now, I'm not a big fan of Rahm Emanuel, as he brought up, but this This is where we are. A lot of what we are seeing, though it is important, it is a distraction so that we don't focus on those things that we need to focus on to get those things done in order to change the conditions of all of our communities. So, and all of us need to come together to talk about that. So we're going to be bringing up a little bit later on in the program is going to be Brigadier General Holt, who is a Brigadier General Blaine Holt is going to be coming up in the eight o'clock hour. He's a Deputy United States Military Representative of NATO, and he is going to be giving us some more information about what Donald Trump just said on Truth Social, maybe about 45 minutes ago, where he says, "Congratulations to everyone," in all caps. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire. And approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down the completed they're in progress. I'm not sure what he says, their final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted. Now, this is what Trump announced on his Truth Social just about 2 hours ago. Now, we don't know what to make of any of that, and what this actually means, and what's going to actually come of it. We don't know. It's going to take weeks, months, maybe years to figure this out. I know all of us don't want us to be in a protracted war where we're sending more of our soldiers to be killed and to end up in a never-ending war like we ended up in Iraq and Afghanistan for more than 20 plus years, losing 4, 5, 6,000 of our troops for what? But we will be talking with the Brigadier coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. Now, again, I still say that we have to really pay attention to what is happening that we don't see as opposed to what we do see. What we do see is important, but you have to know that what we see on the surface of what's actually taking place behind the walls, behind the closed doors, and what is being planned. So we can't get so caught up into some of the things that people pay attention to as being the major issues. Like, for instance, that many of you get caught up on this whole ideology or this whole thing about transgender athletes playing in female sports. I mean, they get you sucked into those kind of conversations when they are moving and infusing policies that is driving trillions, not just hundreds of millions, not just billions, but trillions, moving trillions of dollars into the control of just a few people. Now, Professor Pape was, in my view, 100% correct that the Democratic Party needs to get out of this anger politics and really get into the substance of what is it that we need to do to move ourselves together with innovation, and marrying that innovation with education, improving our education, and making sure that we have the right types of education within our school systems. While we're throwing rocks back and forth, the people that we have in public office, and all they're doing is throwing rocks back and forth. Innovation is passing us by. Other countries, China is doing what they are doing, and we are falling further and further behind. And who gets hit the hardest? What communities get hit the hardest? It's our communities that hits the hardest. All right, so we're gonna watch for that. I want to kind of switch over a little bit for a few minutes. I got an email that they're going to be having these budget hearings, or not hearings, but let's see. Let me go back to. I got an email here today. Yeah. So, got an email today, and I'm sure that many of you probably got this email where they're reaching out. They're going to be having these budget engagement roundtables. One is coming up on Saturday, June the 28th, June the 30th, and July the 1st. And so they are going to be having these, they're going to be virtual as well as they're going to be in person. And if you got an invitation, that you will be able to participate in these, and you can chime in to where you'll be able to ask questions and offer suggestions about the upcoming budget for 2026. So you should certainly want to talk with your alderman, find out about it. If you haven't received one of the emails and you want to participate in that, these meetings are going to take place. Let's see. The first meeting is going to take place at Truman College, 1145 West Wilson, on June the 28th. And the second meeting is going to be on June 30th, 1900 West Jackson Boulevard. And then the third meeting is going to be at the Kennedy King College, 6301 South Halsted, on July the 1st from 6 o'clock till 8:30. Doors will open. There will be a resource fair at 5 o'clock, and then the roundtable will start from 6 o'clock until 8:30. So again, ideas on how we are going to move forward. I agree that we have to tone it down and get focused on what's really going to be the difference maker for our communities. Now, the idea that Rahm Emanuel is thinking about a run for presidency. Now, I think that we certainly should not let that happen. Certainly, we should be able to mount up enough sentiment and enough pressure from around this region to say no to Rahm Emanuel for president, and certainly say no to Rahm Emanuel as governor for the state of Illinois. We've seen what his governance was like, and it was not of a positive benefit for the city, and certainly was not of a positive benefit for our communities. So there are a couple of things that are coming down. I want to get your thoughts about, or to find out what you know about it. I saw this that I read over the weekend. That let's see, which state representative is bringing forth this bill. And let's see. So now this is okay. So here is Senator Ram Villa who is the senator from the 8th district, and he is proposing the this bill that he wants to. He's sponsoring. What is it? What's the bill that he's he's sponsoring the Usage Charge Act, which establishes the Road Usage Charge Advisory Committee to guide the development and the evaluation of the road usage charge pilot program, and to assess the potential for mileage-based revenue as an alternative to the current system of taxing highway use through motor fuel taxes. Now, we all know what they want to say that this is about, but this is it's not really a surprise, but it's just another way for them to create another tax, where they are talking about because of the increase of vehicle electrification continues to grow, the states are getting less revenues for gasoline and diesel taxes. So they're trying to adapt this. Now, so you want to disproportionately create more taxes, right? And the people who drive vehicles or gasoline vehicles are going to end up paying disproportionately, even if they were to do this, or would be disproportionately paying higher taxes than those who have electric vehicles. Now, I don't know what the number is, or certainly the increase of electric vehicles as opposed to gasoline vehicles now. And I know in Florida, what they've done on some of their expressways is they have created these express lanes, and you travel in these express lanes. Now, you get in these express lanes, it doesn't make any difference how many people that you have, but if you travel in those express lanes, you pay a higher toll driving in the express lanes than people who would be driving in the regular lanes. So, and this is a pilot program that they started down in Florida. Now, going back, I think this was started in 2022. They started this pilot program. When I go back down there, I'm going to find out when I talk to a friend of mine who is a commissioner down there to see what this is all about. But again, it's just another form of a tax, just like speed cameras and red light cameras. They are another form of a tax where there's no redeeming benefit. Now, if you're going to have speed cameras, I saw the enforcement of how they are doing speed cameras in California. So in California, they're starting a pilot program for speed cameras. Not that I am advocating for speed cameras, but if you're going to actually go after the problem drivers, now people who are driving 6 miles an hour to 10 miles over the speed limit, those are not problem drivers. Now, people who are driving upwards 15 to 20 miles over the speed limit in a community, then, nobody should be driving 20 miles over the speed limit, 15 miles over the speed limit in a community. But California, this is how California is instituting their speed camera, because they're going after what they consider to be real problematic drivers. So in California, they passed a bill that is allowing for the use of automated speed cameras in this pilot program in 6 California counties: Los Angeles, Glendale, Long Beach, San Francisco, San Jose, and Oakland. And the bill would be that it would impose a $100 fine on anyone that is caught driving 16 to 25 miles over the speed limit. 16 to 25 miles over the speed limit. And then it would be a $200 fine for anyone going over 26 miles over the speed limit, and a $500 fine for anyone driving 100 miles over the speed limit. So you'd be from 26 to actually 99 miles an hour. It would be a $200 fine, and from $100 miles over the speed limit as a $500 fine. Now, if you were to have an enforcement, that means that you're really trying to go after the problematic drivers. Then you could see where they're doing it. Now, they are, and then for anybody who is driving, let's see, there is anybody who is driving 11 to 15 miles will receive a warning notice for the first offense and a $50 fine for the second offense. And individuals who make less than the 250% of the poverty level will have their fines reduced to 50% or 80% if they are indigent. So, if you're going to have that kind of enforcement where it is layered enforcement, you're really going after problem drivers. But we found out that there are now 154 cities in the country, 154 cities in the country that actually have photo enforcement of speed cameras. 154. Now there are 19,400 municipalities within the country. Still not a lot of people using it, because there really, again, is no redeeming benefit for them other than to just raise a bunch of money. But this is the only enforcement where I've seen that they're actually, on paper, appearing to go after the real problematic drivers. Now, the other cities that have speed cameras enforcement, there is no other city that has the speed camera enforcement that enforces or that fines anyone for driving less than 11 miles an hour over the speed limit. So your first fine is at 11 miles over the speed limit. Chicago is the only city in America that you can get a ticket for going 6 miles over the speed limit. It is almost impossible, if you are a driver and you drive on a regular basis, for you not to get at least one of those tickets in Chicago. So really, it is nothing more than setting up another tax revenue. Brandon Johnson, just like his predecessors, said that they would do something about it. And what do? They double down on it. So we have gotten more of the data. We've FOIA'd the operations manual. We found out through one FOIA that the cameras, the calibrations of the cameras are off. And this is just at one of them. It's off upwards to 1.2 mile an hour if you're going above 60 miles an hour. But from 6 miles an hour to 62 miles an hour, it's off by 0.62 mile per hour. So that means that if the city's recording you at 36, you actually could be going 35.38 miles per hour. And this came from their own information. This is the company that actually calibrates the cameras for the city. It's the company is called Keystone Compliance that actually does the calibrations for the city. All right. We have, I think my 8 o'clock guest is not going to be able to make it. I think that I just got an email. Let's see here. Okay. So hopefully, maybe my guest is coming up. We're supposed to be having Brigadier General Blaine D. Holt that is supposed to be joining the program momentarily. I know that he had another event, but not sure if he's going to be here. Let me just email Corrine to find out. Okay. All right. So, so here it is that we are in this situation where we don't know if we're going to be ended up, and hopefully, according to, and I'm hoping that what Donald Trump wrote in on his Truth Social, that there is actually a ceasefire being negotiated, and that we're not going to end up in a protracted war where we have to put our men and women out to war. All right, so listen, we're going to give you, this is a clip that someone sent to me about Black history. We know we just acknowledged and remembered. I went to like 3 different Juneteenth events. I went to the one at the Angel of God Resource Center, which used to be my church over at 10833 South Halsted, that is now a community center. It was purchased by Annie Smith, and who is the executive officer of Angel of God Ministry. She had a really big resource center, and it was really nice. It wasn't about partying, but she had a lot of resources for some career opportunities. They had the Chicago Police Department was there, and they were talking about the benefits and the types of things that are offered, trying to get the police department to be actually more diverse, trying to get more Black people on the police department. And they talked about the resources that are available to people to come on the police department. Now, I was supposed to get a phone call because we were going to have them to come on the program to really talk more about what it was and what it is that they offer for people who would be come police officers. And they're trying to get the police department to be more diverse, where they're trying to have it 1/3 black, 1/3 white, 1/3 Hispanic, and of course to get others and from the Asian community and other communities to go on the police department. But they're saying it is a real challenge of getting people to join the police department. And I get it. The police department here in the city of Chicago has a real problem. It has a real problem, has a real PR problem, has a real trust problem, that here you are in the city of Chicago and you are the number one in the country for having and participating in wrongful convictions in the country. 540 wrongful conviction cases, all of which are not settled. They're not settled here in Chicago. 540. And predominantly, most of those are black men. Um, and um, and so, but you want to get more people to get on to the police department, and then they go out and do this thing that the superintendent made this decision to support what the state's attorney announced at the beginning of the year, that they were going to bypass felony review, which there are some serious problems with that, which is also a violation of the state statute. It is become commonplace that if you decide, just because you're in a certain position, that you are not going to be in compliance with the law, that you can do it. Now, the law says, and it's very clear that the law says that the only person who have the power to charge a person with a felony is a state's attorney or the assistant state's attorney. That's it. Those are the people who are empowered by the state to charge people with a felony. Well, this state's attorney, this Cook County state's attorney, Eileen O'Neill Burke, decided when she got into office, and they announced it in some little obscure uh, digital news outlet, that they were going to be bypassing the felony review, and they were going to have a pilot program starting in the 7th district, which is in Inglewood. And this pilot program, they were training police officers who are not lawyers. They didn't go to law school. They didn't pass the bar, and they don't have a license to practice law in the state of Illinois. So they don't even have the minimum requirements to be in a position, which then not only do you have to go to law school, pass the bar, then be licensed in the state of Illinois, then you have to be sworn in as an assistant state's attorney or a state's attorney of a county in order to have the powers to review evidence and charge someone with a felony. That's the state statute. They have decided that they have this pilot program that is in the 7th and in the 5th. The 7th is in Inglewood, and the 5th is in Roseland. So, and they never mention this to any. This happened post the election. Now, remember, we just elected these advisory councils in each police district, that the police are supposed to be working and advising the council on changes that's happening within the police department, and they were supposed to be collaborating with the council, and the council actually is supposed to be representing the constituents. Well, this was a decision that was made in a vacuum. This was a decision that was made by the state's attorney and supported by the superintendent of police. And their rationale behind it was, this was their rationale, supposedly that the Cook County State's Attorney, Burke, had a conversation with the superintendent of police, Snelling, Larry Snelling. And her question to him was, what is your, the biggest complaint that you're getting? And supposedly the biggest complaint that they're getting is that police officers are spending too much time having to write reports and be off the streets where they can be on the streets addressing more serious crimes for these low-level, so-called low-level felonies. So this is what they came up with. No conversation with any of the district councils, no conversation with the community, no conversation with anybody at the public defender's office, no conversation with judges, nothing. They just made this decision that this is what they are going to do. Violate the law. So this was announced back in January. Now, I'm not sure why the district councils didn't pick it up, because, you know, I saw it, and I'm sure many of you saw it when it was announced. They didn't make a big deal about it. The news didn't even make a big deal about it. But why the district council did not know about it is still a mystery to me. None of them knew anything about it. And it wasn't until March that they raised questions about it. So there was the first community meeting over at Ogden Park in the 7th District. Joseph Williams is the chair of that district council. And so I went to that meeting. There were 46 of these cases, 46 of these cases that had already bypassed the felony review, where police officers, not assistant state's attorney, police officers charged someone with a felony. Now, they claim that these are low-level felonies, that there are no victims. And my question was, how do you know that these people actually have guns? Because they're supposed to be people who are not supposed to have guns. And my question was, well, how do you know that they have the gun? These people who are felonies, how do you know that they have or in illegal possession of a gun? So there were 46 cases at that time, 46. And the state's attorney, who never shows up to any of these meetings, and I'm told that she will never show up to any of those meetings. So she sent one of her policy persons, and one of her policy persons said that there were 46 of those cases that had actually been filed by the police. 30 of them, now these are their numbers, 30 of those 46 were upheld by the bench or upheld by the court, 30 of them. She never mentioned about the other 16 until I raised the question, what happened to the other 16 cases? The other 16 cases were thrown out meaning that those people should never have been detained in the first place. So we had 16 people who were arrested and detained and charged by the police that should never have been charged, should never have been arrested, but they were. We don't know what the impact was. We don't know if they lost their job. We don't know what happened to them. What we do know is that they have an arrest on their record that they should never have had. They were detained when they should never have been detained. Now, so 16 cases got thrown out. Now, she never mentioned the 16 cases. These 16 cases only got mentioned when I got up and I gave my public comments, because they only gave you 2 minutes to give your public comments. So that means that there were 46 cases. 30 of them, she claims, were upheld by the court. 16 of them got thrown out. So if 30 of them were upheld by the court, that meant that there was a 65%, if you want to call it, 65% of them were upheld by the court. So you got a 65% grade, basically. Well, on any test score that I saw someone get a score of 65, you flunked. So that means that 35% of all of those who were detained, arrested, and charged, you're at a 35% failure rate. We already have a problem with wrongful convictions. And the district commander of District 7 stood up and said to the audience, said to the citizens, and these are his words: "We want you all to trust us. We are not going to detain or arrest anybody who shouldn't be." The word trust, they should take that right out. We would like to trust. Now, there were many of us who support our police department, who support the police. But we have a problem. We have to acknowledge that there is a problem within our police department right here in Chicago. So the idea of asking us to trust you is not something that can be easily gained. We have to deal with, unfortunately, the dubious tag of being the leader in the country for wrongful convictions. The next state to Chicago, Illinois, is Texas with 474. We are at 540. And it appears that we have already gone way past whatever was allotted in the budget for the settlement of police misconduct in the city of Chicago. City of Chicago leads every other city for police misconduct settlements. I think we are somewhere up near $1.5 billion, probably closer to $2 billion, that you and I, as taxpayers, are on the hook for. Because now that's just of what we are paid out. That's not what is covered by the insurance. That's just what we're on the hook for. 1.2 billion actual tax dollars that the taxpayers are on the hook for. And they want for us to blindly trust that the police department is going to get it right. Now, this was put in place under the auspices that it would help to fast track getting police officers back out on the beat, back out on the street, so that they could be dealing with more serious crimes. Now, we have heard that ad nauseum. We've heard that, right? So we did a little bit of digging. And so I spoke to a couple of people who I know that are within the police department, and a couple of people who have recently retired, that kind of helps us with information that we ordinarily wouldn't be able to get. And so we asked the question that, so you've got a personnel problem. And because you have a personnel problem, you want to compromise the constitutional protection of citizens for the convenience of a personnel problem that you have. Because that's what you said that this is about. We don't have the manpower, and we need to have the police officers back on the streets. So they broach this as though you would go back on the street, right? So you're going to get back on the street, and again, these are low-level fines. And then they said that even though the bypass or the felony review, and what they said felony review was that they don't have to wait for a assistant state's attorney to come to review their arrest and the evidence to make a determination of whether or not this is a chargeable offense, but that the assistant state's attorney reviews it later. Okay, well, we found out that that was not correct because it's reviewed by the court. So we also found out that this process of what they claim does not get a police officer back out on the street any sooner, because the police officer who makes the arrest or the crew that makes the arrest has to come in and has to do a report. So it doesn't put you back on the street any sooner. So, and I think, this is just my opinion, I think that it ought not be easy. The process shouldn't be streamlined so that you could wrongfully charge somebody of an offense. You should have to meet the standard of making sure, because it should be hard for you to charge a person, just arbitrarily charge a person of a crime because you got a personnel problem. You need to address the personnel problem and figure out how to address the personnel problem. One of the ways that you can address the personnel problem is some of the officers that you are using in other positions, you can hire civilians to do certain jobs and get those police officers, either take them out of those jobs and put them where they could process people who are being detained, or you can put those people on the streets if you don't have enough personnel. One of the areas that they can do that is in the CAPS department. We all know that in the CAPS department, I've gone to a police district, and in the CAPS department, I've gone there and seen as many as 4 police officers sitting in that little small office. And you're talking to them about some nuisance situation. And there's like 4 police officers, and they're not like police officers that have been on the force for, 30 years and they're nearing their retiring days. These are relatively young police officers. So these are not what I would say that are, older police officers. That's a job that a civilian can be trained to handle, because that's basically what they handle. A civilian can be trained to intake complaints that people have with CAPS or organized CAPS. And if in fact they needed a police officer, then they can call a police officer in. That's one way that you could deal with your personnel issue. Now, I don't know how many officers, there's a CAPS office at every district. I don't know how many officers actually work in CAPS, but there should not be full-time police officers full-time in a CAPS office. That just shouldn't be. That's one area that you can deal with the personnel issue. But that said, there should never be a time that a person's due process and a person's constitutional protections are ever compromised because you have a personnel problem. And because that's what it boils down to. So someone who allegedly had an illegal weapon, their constitutional protections may be compromised because the city has a personnel problem. Well, we are talking with a couple of the well-known with good history criminal attorneys to find out if in fact there is legal standings to reverse this decision made unilaterally or made in a vacuum by the state's attorney to make the state's attorney comply with the law. Now, there are different varying opinions about this. And it seems to be pretty clear that if this is what the statute said, then that is the law. That's the law. That's the standard by which each state attorney has to operate within. You are governed by the law. So I said that we should bring a lawsuit. We should bring a lawsuit against the state's attorney and have Eileen Burke to comply with the law. So, like they have at Area 1, which is on in District 2 on 51st and Wentworth. Now, there are times that they have, and certainly when they have more serious crimes or people who are with more serious charges, the state's attorney, some of them are housed or on duty at the Area 1. So when they are bringing a detainee in and they bring in the arrest, they bring in the evidence for that detainee, then the state's attorney or the assistant state's attorney is there to review the entire process, to review the detainment, the arrest, the gathering of the evidence, and then the assistant state's attorney makes the determination on whether or not there is probable cause and for them to have a chargeable offense. Police officers do not have that authority. And we should not allow for them to abdicate their responsibilities and their fiduciary duty to every person's constitutional protection, regardless of what they were believed to have done or not, because you have a personnel problem. That's what it boils down to, for the inconvenience of the Chicago Police Department having a personnel problem. Well, we need for you all to help us with this. We're going to be, again, calling for this, and we can actually call for this even before we find out what is the legal remedy for it. Is that we could force them with enough public pressure to reverse course. Now, I was a little bit disappointed that Larry Snellen would go along with this. I was a little disappointed that he would go along with this, that knowing how Black men disproportionately are the ones who fall victim to wrongful charges, wrongful arrest, and then in many cases, wrongfully convicted. I mean, imagine this person or a person that has served 15, 20, 30 years, 34 years of a recent case that we saw, 30 years in prison, going through God knows what that they've had to experience. 30 years. They just had to settle the case that was about 2 weeks before this whole thing was exposed, with the 4 young boys who were teenagers at the time that spent a combined 73 years in prison for a crime that the Chicago Police Department, the Chicago police officers, and the Cook County State's attorney prosecuted 4 teenage boys, prosecuted them, convicted them on trumped up charges and evidence. And these boys spent a combined 73 years in prison. That settlement was $50 million, which they're appealing. Now, I don't argue people getting whatever settlement that they got for being wrongfully convicted and prosecuted and jailed, imprisoned, and everything that you had to endure. I don't have a real big problem with people getting the settlements. Just not something that I have a real problem with, because I was arrested and spent about not quite 48 hours. Let's see, from 24, 48 hours at the Cook County Jail. Now, I will tell you that the experience that I went through, going through that process, showed me and demonstrated to me just how inhumane that system really is, and how somebody goes back a second time, let alone the first time, but goes back a second time, is beyond my capacity to even understand. But for somebody that is detained, charged, sits in detainment for 3, 4, whatever the number is, then convicted of a crime based on what we now know to be complete fabrication, that they went through a court process. They went through evidence. They went through preliminary hearings. They went through a trial where you have the prosecution, you have the defense, you have the court, you have a jury, and they brought forth all of this evidence, arguments, testimonies, cross-examination, redirect, all of this process, and convicted 4 people. They were then sentenced by a court to 30 years in prison, only to find out 30 years later, went in as boys, 30 years later, to find out that all of it was a sham. All of it. So when somebody gets whatever they get, I don't begrudge that or argue that for the people who were victimized, because what they lost and what they had to endure, most of us could not even imagine what that looks like and what that was, nor do you even want to hear it, and what they now have to live with for the rest of their lives, processing and dealing with this. So I don't have a problem with that. Now, how do we deal with that part where you have police officers, state's attorneys bringing forth evidence that's not evidence at all, that is fabricated? That's fabricated. And let me tell you, the prosecution knows it, because they sit and they weigh how and what evidence that they can submit and withhold evidence that will bring about a different outcome. In my view, the prosecutors and everyone in it, every one of them, should be responsible They should be responsible. Now, some people will say, well, how are you going to hold the prosecutor? They work for the state. So they're in effect immune because they work for the state. Well, a corrupt police officer is not immune. A corrupt prosecutor is not immune. A corrupt judge is not immune. They actually go to prison. They get charged with a crime. They go to prison. So there should be some level of accountability that the persons involved with that, because there is no way that the police or the prosecutor, there is no way that they do not know that the so-called evidence is not evidence. They absolutely know it, because they sit and they huddle and they say, well, if you bring this in, this is exculpatory, and that simply means that this is evidence that could refute or prove this person is not responsible. But what they do is they tuck it away. We're not going to present that. We are not going to provide that to the other side. It's called discovery. That means that each side has to provide to the other all of their findings. But we're going to take this out, because if we put that in, this is a gap. So the exculpatory evidence means that, like, if you have a puzzle, that means that the evidence, all of it, like a thread, has to be woven together. That's why it says that a person, you have to find that this person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt. It has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you have a exculpatory evidence and you put that evidence in there, then that evidence could create reasonable doubt that this person may not have done this. That's the law. That's the Constitution. So my point is that 540 wrongful convictions, they all knew. There is no ignorance to it. They all knew. And they decided that in their mind, even when you watch, in their mind, even though the evidence says differently, but in their mind, this person did it. Now, they were not there. They didn't see the person do it. And the evidence that they have is somewhat flimsy. They could have done it, but you don't have the evidence to say beyond a reasonable doubt that this is the person who committed that offense. Now, I said all of that to say is that there is no convicting someone by accident. It is not. So you compromise the court, meaning you compromise the judge, and we certainly have incidents and cases, or certainly a case with the current state's attorney where they prosecuted an 11-year or 10-year-old kid that had nothing to do with an offense. And she's now the Cook County state's attorney. And that goes on to speak to some other things that we have to talk about. Certainly have to do better about making sure that, we're much more informed about these people. But at any rate, the prosecutors know that the people that they have um, gotten a conviction for, they know that they got a conviction based on a faulty case. They know it because they have made adjustments with evidence that they knew that would have proven that person's innocent, that they willfully did not present. That's how that happens. There is no accidents. There is no, wow, well, we didn't know that. That does not happen. It cannot happen. Our system that we have, when it works, and it's not perfect, but the system that we have and the rules that are in place, you cannot convict a person by accident. There are no oops. There are no accidents. They're all willfully done. All willfully done. There is no person prosecuting a case where that somebody within that chain does not know the entire team, because if 30 years later they got their cases overturned, the information was available 30 years prior. They call it new evidence, but it's really not new evidence. It's evidence that had been excluded and not properly excluded. So that's why I fundamentally believe, that people who participate in it themselves ought to go to prison. Like the two federal judges, I think it was in Pennsylvania and one in Texas, that were sending teenagers to detention facilities so that they could get kickbacks. And I think that they had gotten some combined $2.5 million or something like that in kickbacks, that they would send children off to detention centers for talking back to a school teacher or something ridiculous, because their friends had these detention facilities and had these contracts from the state and were getting millions upon millions of dollars to detain teenagers. And these judges were sending teenagers up the river because they were getting kickbacks. Both those judges end up going to prison. I think state's attorneys and police officers, when you have a case of somebody who has been wrongfully convicted, the people that had to do with that, those people should be held accountable before a court, because they violated the Constitution. They violated the oath that they swore to about seeking justice. You don't swear to an oath to win cases. That's nowhere in the oath that you swear to. You swear to an oath to diligently seek justice. So those officers of the court, the police officers, all of those people who participated in that should be held accountable. And I believe that some of them should be criminally held accountable. I don't know how you deal with the monetary part of it because, the truth is, where are they going to get $30 million? Or should they have some sort of bond? I don't know. I don't know whether or not the state's attorney office should have to put up a bond, but who pays for the bond? Should that be paid for by each of them outside of their, or as a part of their dues or something? Something should happen, and we should talk about it, and we should find a solution to it, because it makes no sense that you have 540 people who went to prison, many of them who died. We don't know what the number is of them who died, because we certainly have a number of people who die in Cook County Jail, one of the most notorious jails of death of people who are sitting waiting to go to trial, right here in Cook County. But we should certainly do something about holding those persons accountable and finding ways to deal with it. 540 cases. Every time that I go to one of those meetings, 500, I remind them that we are the capital of wrongful convictions, 540 right here. 540. So don't tell me and don't preach to us about telling us that we should trust the police. We should be able to trust our police department, but we can't. Not with 540 wrongful convictions, and we're at 1 point whatever $billion in wrongful conviction settlements. No, we can't. We can't trust you. We cannot trust you. That does not mean that we don't support our police department. Doesn't mean that at all. All right, we got a few minutes left. We got a few minutes left to go here. I want to remind you all that this Thursday we're going to be meeting by Zoom, 10 by 10 to win. We're going to be meeting by Zoom. We're going to be talking about going forth and what we're doing in terms of this whole new resurgence of information that we have on the speed cameras, and what we need to do there. And we're going to be talking about our next in-person meeting. So again, we have coming up in our midterm elections in 2026. We have people who have announced that they want to run for United States Senate. I think that if we buckle down and organize ourselves first, we could have a much stronger voice in determining the actual candidate. I am not a supporter of Juliana Stratton. I am not a supporter of Robin Kelly. I am not a supporter of Raja Krishnan Murthy. I believe that it should not be the Democratic Party, for which I am a Democrat, but I don't believe it should be the party deciding for us who the actual candidates are. We have the wherewithal to make that decision if we organize ourselves in the posture that we can say we have a voice in this, that we are going to have a voice to say who the candidate would be that we could select, slate, and then elect. We have the numbers to do it. What we have not done is to actually put the work in to bringing the team together so that we can then have our own internal discussions, our own internal debates, and our own internal process to see who it is that we want to send back to Washington to represent us as the next United States Senate. I don't believe that the Democratic Party should be making that decision. I think that we, the people, and in particular, the Black community, should have a significant voice in that. Everybody has to come by way of the Black community to get support to win an election, if it is a citywide, countywide, or statewide office, and the United States Senate is a statewide election. So, you know, we need to play a part in that. Otherwise, we're going to have the Democratic Party getting behind someone that we're ultimately going to have to support, because the alternative is not an option for us. So, since we have to support somebody, why can't it be, and why shouldn't it be, somebody that we, as a broader base of people, determine who that is? We can do that. That is the purpose. That is the reason why we need to organize ourselves, so that our voice, that we can collectively come together and say that we want that person. We want John Smith. That's who we have determined that is going to be the candidate, John Smith, and who we've determined that we're going to advocate for, we're going to campaign for, and we're going to vote for. We put the numbers together, we can be the deciding factor in who wins that seat. It is that practical, it is that simple. But we have to do the work. We have to do the work. So this Thursday, we're going to continue. So please, if you haven't been to a meeting, so we're going to be meeting by Zoom this Thursday. And then we're also going to find out where our next in-person meeting, and we're having in-person meetings at different libraries. Last time, we'll probably go back to the Woodson Library. We had a good meeting there for our first meeting a couple of weeks ago in person, and we'll find out what their calendar is. And so hopefully by Thursday, we will have that to announce at Thursday's meeting, where our next in-person meeting is going to be. So if you haven't, text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385, and then I'll put it on the how about that? I'll put it on the screen. Text 10x10 to the number 909. I'm sorry, 855. What did I say? 855-909-1385. All right. Do that. And And then that way you can get the Zoom link information. You get the Zoom link information there. So I put it on the screen there. Text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385 so that you can get into the Zoom link or the text alert, and then you'll receive the Zoom link. But I'm telling you, so this is not just, it can't be based on one person or just a few people. But if we really organize this, we would actually be a model for the rest of the community, showing what we could actually do. All right, I want to thank, unfortunately, Brigadier General Blaine D. Holt was not able to make it. And I certainly want to thank Professor Robert Pape, who is a political scientist and professor at the University of Chicago, for coming on to help us to better understand what's going on in the Iran-Israel, now United States conflict. Let's hope that it is true, that is coming to a quick end without any of our soldiers being deployed. I want to thank you all for tuning into the program. We'll see you next time, next week, same time, same place, for the Monday night edition of the People Show.